Well, without any further ado, I've had the pleasure of knowing Judge McCool for a long time. We met through the Farmers Federation. He serves on the Pickens County Board. I serve here in Fayette. Great family. Thought the world of your dad and Miss McCool. But glad to have him tonight. He's on the Court of Criminal Appeals now, running for the Supreme Court. And do you have any opposition, Judge? No opposition in the fall, so he's going to be on the Alabama Supreme Court. So we're glad to have a Christian conservative like Judge McCool here with us tonight. So Judge McCool, if you'll come at this time, we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come and to be here with you all. This is home to me. I live in Pickens County, of course, but this has been my stomping grounds for quite a long time. As a matter of fact, 6 years ago when I left the office of district attorney and began to go back and forth to Montgomery and to go down there, you know, instead of my focus being down there instead of here, it was weird because my life revolved around Carrollton Courthouse, Fayette Courthouse, around the Lamar County, Vernon Courthouse. I probably put 50,000 miles a year on my car going back and forth through all of this circuit, and had a lot of cases that we dealt with, a lot of things that were pretty hard things to deal with when I was here as district attorney, and it was a good time though. It was a time that I enjoyed working with so many people, and it just was a blessing to be able to serve in that capacity. And I'll say this: I'm not going to give my campaign speech because, as Brad mentioned, I'm not opposed, so I'm not going to bore you with all of that. But I will tell you why I ran 6 years ago and why I'm running now briefly. But basically, there's 19 appellate court judges. There are 5 judges on the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals. There are 5 judges on the Alabama Court of Civil Appeals. Then there are 9 justices, including the Chief Justice on the Alabama Supreme Court. And one of the things that has been a theme throughout the years, I've been practicing law for this year be 31 years, and it's been 25 of that was the prosecutor in this circuit, and I began to look around at some of the appellate court judges. There's a difference in what the appellate courts do and what Sam Junkin, for example, does here, or Jerry Ferry did, and now Merrill Nolan does. In the trial courts of this state, you put on witnesses, you take evidence, you make arguments, you deal with juries, you're dealing with people all the time. But what we do at the appellate court level is we don't see witnesses. We don't look at evidence except what's been admitted into the court transcript or the record. We read the cold words on the page of the transcripts, okay? And we look at it basically, the thing that the appellate courts do, like for us on the Court of Criminal Appeals, we look at any trial, any conviction that comes out of Fayette County. It comes down there to our court, and we look at it and we decide, was it done right? That's basically what we do. A lot of times people think when you appeal a case to Montgomery, you get a new trial down there, but you don't. In fact, nobody shows up in front of us but the lawyers, and most of the time they just submit briefs. It's rare, it's a small percentage of the cases that we even have the lawyers come in person and argue to us. That's called oral arguments. So we're just looking at the cold words on the page of the transcript, and I just thought it was a good idea, if you're going to be doing that you've been in the trial courts and done that. It's kind of like I talked to our teacher friends. The best principals are those that have taught in the classroom, now some of my farmer friends get this better. If you've ever baled hay behind somebody raking that's never baled hay, you know what a mess a windrow will get into, don't you? Ain't that right? You need somebody with experience, the actual trial experience, and I've had that for, as I said, about 25 years. So that's why I ran 6 years ago, and this time there was an opening on the Alabama Supreme Court. Justice Sarah Stewart ran for Chief Justice and won, and I want to talk about those races just in a minute. But she ran and won, and because she ran for Chief Justice, she couldn't run for re-election in her seat, so it made an open seat on the Alabama Supreme Court. So I threw my name in the hat about 1.5 years ago and just started running. I don't know, you know, there's no real secret to running statewide. You need to know the different people and organizations that are interested in those races and go see them, and you need to talk to them, and you need to share with them, you know, in my case, the conservative judicial philosophy that I hold, which I think is the right kind of philosophy. We don't have a living constitution. It's a great document. It's an amazing document. I believe it was providentially inspired, but it's not constantly evolving to the mores of society. That's what some of the liberal justices on the U.S. Supreme Court think. But because of Trump, thankfully, we have a conservative U.S. Supreme Court with one or two, you know, things they do that I haven't agreed with, but mostly I agree with. And what they do is they apply the law as they look at the Constitution as a document that means, the words mean something. You know, it's kind of like Bible interpretation, okay? I mean, you know, I'm a preacher, so I just think the words mean something. They're not changing with society. And so what we try to do, and our court actually just recently implemented this, or, you know, we've been following the principle for years, but we said it explicitly in a case that I wrote about 2 or 3 weeks ago, that we look for the original public meaning of the words. We try to figure out what the Constitution meant when it was passed, the Alabama Constitution or the statutory provisions of law. That's a strong, that's pushed strongly by the Federalist Society. They're probably the biggest proponent of that, but now our Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals utilizes that test, which is the conservative judicial philosophy test for statutory interpretation. So I started running 6 years ago. I put 62,000 miles on my vehicle in a year, from July 2017 to July 2018. I tell everybody it's a big state, and Gordo ain't near nothing. So it takes a while to get anywhere from Gordo, because that's why I live there, because it ain't near nothing. And I did the same thing this year. I started about 1.5 years ago, and I put about 52,000 miles on my car from last November 2022 to November 2023. And thankfully, at the end of the day, on November 10th, which was the deadline for qualification, no Republican or Democrat qualified to run against me. So if I can live till next January, I'll be able to take a seat on Alabama Supreme Court, and looking forward to doing that. So, and I want to, you know, my plan is to take that same, I mean, it's different types of cases, but there's no change in philosophy. You still take that conservative judicial philosophy, the experience that I've had in trying cases. I don't care if it's a civil case or a criminal case. If you've tried cases, there's a particular set of skills that you've employed that will do you good when you're looking at those transcripts and those briefs. And also, I will say this, about a week ago, I was eating lunch down at the Jack's in Reform, okay? That's about 10 miles from my house. And I looked up, my brother was there with me. I looked up, and there came in Rick Burgess, Rick and Bubba, okay? I looked at him from this, that's Rick Burgess, I'm pretty sure. And I met him before, but he didn't know who I was. It's been so long, you know. But I went over to him, and I took a picture with him, because, you know, that's kind of, as we say in Pickens County, that's big doings when somebody like that shows up, you know. And but I told him, I said, you know, Rick, you may want to sue me for plagiarism or copyright infringement or whatever, but one of the things I've always said on my campaign trail, sort of the third point I'd always make, is that one of the things we're missing today is common sense. And Rick and Bubba, I'd always share this with people, Rick and Bubba have said many times that common sense is a superpower. You know, it's bigger than X-ray vision. It's so rare nowadays. I said, so I want to take some common sense to the Supreme Court as well, and that was been part of one of the planks of my platform. So, Lord willing, I'll be able to take office, as I said, over in January. We'll have to go. I wasn't on the ballot Tuesday because I'm the party nominee by virtue of being unopposed. I will be on the ballot in November, and so I do ask for your votes. I'll be the only name on the ballot. I hope I can win that race. So, if I can't, as my good friend Jim Standridge said, it's a narrow ditch, but it's deep. I guess if I fall in it, I'm in trouble. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to share a little bit of that with you, but also just give you a little rundown of the judicial races in this past week's election. We had 3 contested races on the ballot, and to me, now I'm a political junkie. All that's so interesting to me. We had the Chief Justice race. Justice Sarah Stewart, there was a guy named Brian Taylor running against her. And then you had Court of Civil Appeals. There was a race involving Chad Hansen, who was the incumbent, had been there for 6 years. This is his first term. A guy named Parker, and I forget his first name, was running against him from Coleman. And then in the race to replace me on the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals, there were 2 guys running, Rich Anderson and Thomas Govan. And just briefly, Justice Stewart beat her opponent by 61% to 39%. There was about 130,000 votes between them. She had raised a lot more money. She was endorsed by Alpha. She was endorsed by several other organizations, but Taylor was actually endorsed by several of the big business organizations, so it ended up being a big fight that wasn't for sure that when it started it would be one, but it turned into one. But she ended up winning, and Sarah's a good friend of mine, real good justice, and she'll do a great job as Chief Justice. One of her claims to fame is that she was a circuit judge for 13 years, so she knows how the trial courts work. And most of the Chief Justice's job is to administrate the entire court system. The Chief Justice is the one who basically runs the administrative office of courts, all the trial courts, all the district courts, even the municipal courts fall under the Chief Justice's administrative duties. And that means that the Chief Justice, for example, her duties in regard to cases are less than the duties of the rest of the justices. I don't think this is a hard and fast number, but essentially she will get half the cases that all the other justices get. The way it works, just to sort of give you an inside look, is when cases are appealed to our court or the Supreme Court, it works the same way up there. They're randomly assigned to one of the judges or one of the justices. And then when so me, for example, I got about 55 cases on my docket that are assigned to me. All the other judges have similar numbers, and so I have 3 staff attorneys that work for me, and they take those cases that are assigned to me. One of them will break them down, and I have a senior staff attorney that is actually from Sullivan. Some of you may know Eric Brown. His father, John Brown, is a Church of Christ preacher up there. Very good family, good folks. But Eric lives in Montgomery now, and so he's my senior staff attorney. One of my other staff attorneys is Josh Hagler, and most of y'all up here probably won't remember this, but Brian will, Kelly will too. Mr. C.O. Burkhalter was the only lawyer in Gordo, and he was my first boss. I went back to work for him in 1993 in Gordo. Josh is his grandson, so he works for me now, and I think that's kind of been interesting. Another little tidbit, so C.O.'s father was Mr. Lum Burkhalter, who was a Primitive Baptist preacher. My great-grandfather was Manley Springer over in Ecola. They both preached over there, sort of swapped up, pastoring the church my brother pastors. Now, they were both Primitive Baptist preachers together, so the Burkhalters and the McCools go way back, and now Josh is working for me and does an outstanding job. One of the things that's important when it comes to the appellate courts is that you have good staff attorneys that know what they're doing. They know how to write, they know how to research. And just a quick rabbit trail, one of the first cases I got involved a judge in a neighboring county, not one of this circuit, but in a neighboring county, who had found a particular provision of the law unconstitutional at the trial level. Well, the state appealed that, and And we researched and decided that the judge had made the wrong decision. And so Josh put together, you know, he did the research, and, you know, what I do is I do the research myself, but I also direct them in which direction I think it needs to go. We came back with this 75-page treatise. I mean, it was as good of a writing on Constitution. He had procedural due process covered. He had substantive due process covered. He had equal protection. It was amazing. So I called Josh in my office and I said, Josh, I said, I really don't see much to change in this. I changed a word or two just to say I edited it, you know. And I said, Josh, I said, this is great. I want to see one problem. I said, when this case goes out, people all over this state are going to say, what a constitutional scholar Judge McCool is. And they're going to start inviting him to speak places and teach classes on that. And I said, and you're just going to have to go with me, because when I'll be glad, I'll present the case and I'll present the law, but then when they start asking questions, and we'll do like Jerry Clower in that story about the professor and the chauffeur. When they swapped places and the chauffeur was up there and they began to ask him questions, he said, that's the dumbest question I've ever heard in my life. And it's so dumb, I'm going to ask my chauffeur in the back, which was actually the professor, to come up and so that's what I'm going to have to do with Josh, is tell him, you know, that's too simple a question. I might have to get my staff attorney to answer it. So, but that's kind of the way we work. And so what happens then is, when I get a case, and justices on the Supreme Court, when they get a case, they think it's ready, you know, it's right, then we circulate it. In my case, it's to the other 4 judges on my court. On our court, we have to have 3 votes. 2 other people have to agree with me that it's right. And what happens is, and this is what I love about serving in this scenario, is that sometimes, you know, one of my fellow judges will come to me and say, hey man, I like it, but you missed this. Here's a case that you didn't pick up. Or maybe I'll do the same thing to them, and I go to them. And sometimes we don't agree, and they may dissent on a case that I've written, or I may dissent on a case they've written. But sometimes they're right. And I think we put out a better product with 5 minds looking at it than we do if it was just me doing it alone. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to serve like that. And that's what happens on the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice doesn't have as many cases, but she will vote on every case, but the other cases are distributed among the other justices. Also, I wanted to point out in the races that in the Court of Civil Appeals race, Chad Hansen, who was the incumbent, he got the endorsement of every major organization, that, like Alpha and the Business Council, the Civil Justice Reform Committee, the Realtors. He got all their endorsements, and he advertised on television, and he won. He won by about 60,000 votes, 56% to 44%. But the interesting thing, and it's interesting to me, and that's why I want to point it out to you, because you may not have noticed it, but you may have, the race to replace me, it was an interesting race. Rich Anderson and Thomas Goban, I think they both probably came up here. I know Goban did. Both of which, by the way, you could have flipped a coin in that case. They were both outstanding. I mean, they were just excellent. Rich Anderson actually ran against me 6 years ago, and I beat him in the runoff. But he treated me right, and I tried to treat him right, and we became friends. You know, so we're still friends to this day. And so I actually talked with him a little bit before he decided to run, and I also talked with the other guy, Goban. And like I said, they're both great lawyers. They both work at the Attorney General's office. But Mr. Goban got the endorsement of every major group except the Republican Assembly and maybe one more. None of which give, the ones, Rich Anderson, the ones that endorsed him don't give any money. So, you know, it's good to have their endorsement, but unfortunately the lifeblood of statewide politics is still money. You have to have enough money to get up and advertise. So, so going into this race, Mr. Govan raised $250,000. Mr. Anderson only raised $64,000. But for whatever reason, and whatever the advice was, that Thomas got, he didn't get up on TV until a day or two after Rich Anderson got up on TV. And social media is great and it's important, but television is still king. And so ultimately, Rich Anderson won 55% to 45%, spending about less than a third of what Mr. Govan did. That was sort of the Cinderella story of last week. It was kind of interesting. So he has neither one of them, there's no more, I'm sorry, Chief Justice Stewart has opposition from a Democrat in November, but Mr. Hanson and Mr. Anderson don't. So those two will be, Judge Hanson will be staying on the Court of Civil Appeals, and Judge Anderson will be replacing me. So anyway, it's real interesting analysis. I haven't looked at all the numbers, but I do know that Judge Anderson, soon to be Judge Anderson, went up on television for about a week, and a little over a week, and that is so important in North Alabama primarily. That's where most of the Republican voters are. So that's my analysis of the race. I'm open to questions. If anybody has any questions, I just wanted to kind of share that little bit of insight with you. Do you have any questions about anything related to our job, my job, or to about these races? Oh, I said something about the IVF. You mentioned that too. You mentioned the IVF ruling.
Yeah, we spoke about it.
Yeah. So let me say this too. Brad and I talked about. So recently, Representative Brinyark. By the way, he and I graduated law school together, so we've known each other for quite some time. You've heard all the hoopla about the IVF ruling, okay? What you probably haven't heard is what it was actually all about. What actually happened in that case on the Alabama Supreme Court, and I can talk about it because I wasn't on there, and I'm not telling anybody anything about, I can't talk about what I would rule or how I would rule in the future, but I can talk about the case since it's happened and it's not in my court. Let me just say this. Never underestimate the media's ability to hijack the narrative. Okay? To hijack the narrative. Never underestimate. Never underestimate the devil's ability to use the media to hijack it. What really happened in that IVF ruling was that the Alabama Supreme Court applied the constitutional amendment that we all passed in 2018 that says life begins at conception. That's what they did. There was what happened in the case, the facts were that in this IVF facility down in Mobile, there was somehow a patient got out and into an area they shouldn't have been in and picked up some of the embryos that had been fertilized, dropped them and shattered them, and then 3 sets of parents sued for wrongful death. And the question was, does a wrongful death statute, which is a statutory creation, you don't have that right at common law, it's a statutory creation in Alabama, does it cover that? Well, it covers, it's actually a statute called wrongful death of children. So the question was, are those considered life? Are they considered to be pre-born life? Not, obviously not born children, but pre-born life, which we consider in utero fertilized embryos to be life for purposes of the wrongful death statute. And a majority of the Supreme Court said, yes, they are. They didn't shut down IVF facilities. They didn't, it sounds like you listen to the national media, they shut them down. No, they didn't. They declared, they just said this lawsuit can proceed. The IVF facility shut down because of liability fears and that sort of thing. And, but I'll just say this much in defense of the current Supreme Court. If you listen to the media, it sounds like they had some nefarious, ulterior motive of doing whatever they're doing there. What they really did is they just stayed in their lane. They said, this is the law, and that's what the courts are supposed to do, is declare what the law is. They said, this is the law. Now, if you don't like the public policy ramifications, legislature, you deal with it, okay? And that's the way it's supposed to be. Stay in, the legislature has a lane, the courts have a lane. One of the things I campaigned on is that judicial conservative is is that I don't get out of my lane. I'm not a legislator in a black robe, and I'm not going to be. If the law says something, it says it. And then the legislature, if it does, you know, if the ramifications are something that people don't want, then the elected representatives of the people can go and fix it. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you, that that's my little perspective on it, for whatever it's worth. So, all right, any questions? All right, well, thank y'all so much. I appreciate the opportunity to come and visit.
Judge McCool, thank you. Glad you don't have any opposition. Judge McCool says he's from Gordo. He's really from Zion.
That's right.
Greater metropolitan area.
Amen.
Councilman, did you just come in?
I just came in.
Do you have anything you'd like to share from the council level? I recognize all the other officials.
Okay, I don't have anything.
Okay, good deal. I don't believe, is there any new business to come before the committee before we proceed tonight? I don't anticipate any, but if there is, we'll address that at this time. I don't think there's any old business. We've covered I need an agenda is what I need, or something with what I need to be doing. We've covered our financial report. We've covered our treasurer and secretary's report. Recognize all of our elected officials. No old or new business. Yes, ma'am.
There are several people here that are interested in becoming members
Sure.
or something, but they don't know how to do that. So can you explain?
Yes,
that?
ma'am. So what we hold elections in December, right, of each year. Is that correct? December, and you take office in January. There are 3 members from each district, so there'll be 3 from district, Commissioner Rogers District, 3 from District 1, whatever. So there's 18 members there, and then there are 6 at-large members. And then the officers, they run, as well separately. So, do we, and the rest of the committee help me out, do you have to qualify and all, you have to pay a qualifying fee and all, to run, Mr. Bill? Yeah, I don't know. I'll be glad to send you a copy of the bylaws, or I'll look into that as well. Okay, that's just exactly, that's why I remember doing it, and I didn't think it was for everybody. So, kind of structurally, Kelly, how it works is, chairman, vice chairman, treasurer, secretary, or on what's called the steering committee, the executive committee, and then there are, those other 18, 24 members at large. We did adopt some new bylaws because, frankly, we had a lot of people on the committee that didn't come. And it's hard to have a quorum, and it's hard to conduct business if nobody's there. So, attendance requirements, if you miss more than 3 consecutive meetings, you make your way off. But yeah, we need folks involved.
But I'm talking about not just members, not whether or not.
Oh, just to come?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
there's
no...
Is there any, do you need?
There's no procedure for that.
Pledge, give some blood, what do you need to do? Just show up? What's the deal?
Yeah, so, and you can make a check directly to me. No, that's a good question, because when I finished college and I come here, and there were 5, 6, 7 people at the Republican meetings. I asked the same question. I said, well, do I got to pay? Do I get a card? What do I do? If you want to come, you're welcome to come. Anybody can come. And anybody's welcome to throw their name in the ring for one of those positions as well. But yeah, we would love to have you. Bring a friend. It's like church, right? Bring a friend.
There just were a lot of people here. We just didn't know if we got.
Yeah. No.
Sign, donate some money.
You don't have to sign, donate blood, or any of that. So that's a good question. Any other questions? Mr. Jerry, can we do it different tonight since I didn't do it? Can you stand at that door with a hat for the offering? Do you mind to do that?
Whatever you want to do.
Yes, sir. Don't go out this door, go out that door. I don't think we have any other business tonight. I will say, not on Dr. Killian's behalf, but I do appreciate the work Dr. Killian has done over the years as chairman.
Yeah.
He has really grown the party. He's got great speakers. And, if you want to speak to him about why he resigned, I'm certainly not going to speak on his behalf. I think he did draft a letter. If you want to, I think there's some circulating around. But I do want to thank him for his service and getting the party to where it's at. And certainly no malice on my end or ill will towards Dr. Killian. Wish him the best of luck. But if there's no other business, we will entertain a... Yes, sir.
If you don't mind, There's one question about something that's going through the House right now, and I would like to ask Mr. Brinyark if you don't
Absolutely.
mind about it.
That's why we're here.
Sorry about
Great.
this.
Yeah.
Sorry about this.
Hurry,
But,
adjourn, right, yeah.
What you got?
I heard that there's a bill that's passed out of committee that's proposing a somewhat, I guess for lack of a better term, a pharmacy tax. And basically it's going to add like $10 per prescription to every
Yeah.
prescription. And basically that's going to help the pharmacies, which are failing,
Right.
supposedly.
Y'all, this just came out of the insurance committee, and Philip, it is the one that brought it out of the thing. He's a pharmacist, he's a compounding pharmacist, and he's a great guy, good Republican, and he's concerned about, he says that we've lost 300 family-owned small pharmacies in the last 3 or 4 years, and that's the trend, and that the big pharma and the big CVS's and the Walmarts and all that have special deals with the insurance companies and the middlemen, that when they sign a contract with them, they can't discuss what their deal is with it, and they are greatly punished. And the plan is to get them gone, and once they're gone, then there is no way to check the prices. It will be, they have a monopoly, and it will be whatever they want to charge for stuff. And that they think that the small, family-owned, locally owned pharmacies are the check on prices on medicine right now. Once you get past them, you're not going to have anything to stop them. Well, as I understand it, y'all know Brian Sweat, grew up here in Fayette. I talked with him about this, and let me tell you, if you know Brian, he gets very animated about things, and he's very certain about what he believes. And he sees this as the only way that small pharmacies will be able to survive through the next 3 or 4 years. I went and got a prescription filled yesterday for potassium. And just so you know. Anyway, and it was $2.80. I went to his store, I got it, it was $2.80, and he used that as an example of what was coming down there. He said, "You're paying $2.80 for that." I said, "How much did my insurance, my Blue Cross Blue Shield, what did it pay?" He said, "Nothing." I said, "What else do you get for that?" He said, "Nothing." He said, "I shouldn't put it in a bottle, I shouldn't put a cap on it, I shouldn't put a label on it, and I shouldn't put it in a bag, and I shouldn't spend any time on it because I'm in the hole by the time I give that to you. I can't continue to do that." That is the way many of the things are. Now, I take that side, that's him, and you know, Brian seems to be making a good living, and he's got a great family and whatever. But then I mentioned it, my parents asked me about it, and they have several prescriptions they get every month. And they said, "Did you hear about that crazy bill they've got? $10.67 every prescription. That'll sink us. We can't do that." So, guys, this is going to be a tough thing between, you know, everybody and the spend they're putting on it. And Big Pharma is going to spend a lot of money going against this. They are, and Brian told me that. He said, "Get ready, because these middle distributors and Big Pharma are making tons of money off of this. And they look to make even more once they get us gone. They're going to go full bore against this, and they're going to try to make us look like we're just trying to gouge the public." He said, "But what it is they have these contracts with us that are so restrictive, that are so bad with us, that keep us from making money." He said there's some prescriptions that people come in, and if he would fill it, he would lose $100. So he tells people when they come in with their certain insurance, he tells them, "I'm sorry, we're out of it. You need to go to CVS. You need to go to Walmart." Because
my cousin's having to do that.
he doesn't want to lose that money. And under the contract that they've got with all these things, and there are only 3 middle distributorships that you're going to hear about, these brokers that are in between Big Pharma and the pharmacies. There are 3 that exist, and they all are forcing them out. And I didn't know this, but Blue Cross Blue Shield doesn't do prescriptions. They don't do pharmaceuticals anymore. They've been out of it for 3 years because they saw this coming. They know that they couldn't make money with it. They're out of it, and they turn it over to somebody else. So it's gonna be a very tough bill to get across the line for Philip and those people that are pushing it down there, because it's something that everybody I've talked to, there has not been one person that's been for this in the general public. But then I'm talking to people like Brian Sweat, and he's like, I'm gonna be gone in 3 years. I cannot do this. They are killing us. It's intentional, and we've got to get the word out there. But their word is not going to get out there. They're going to be looking like they're wanting to make even more money, and that they're not going to, it's not going to be for the public. But it's going to be a tough bill for anybody to vote on, because every single constituent of theirs every month is going to get their prescriptions refilled, and if they're paying $10 extra every prescription, that's going to remind them, well, Brian voted for that bill. That just cost me an extra $50, and I don't like that. So that's going to be tough.
Is it 10, but it won't that $10, 80/20 or whatever, it's still gonna be applied, right? Or is it $10 per?
The way that they are breaking it down now,
Cause that's important.
some people say that that's not a real number, but that's what I've seen several times, and that's the way they're spending it, is that it's an extra $10.64 or 67 cents per prescription that you'll be paying.
You also pay that to like CVS and Walmart prescriptions, or just small independent pharmacies?
I think it's going to be with everybody, the way they break it down. I'll tell you this, I don't know the truth about it yet, because that bill has not come to us yet. It is not, that's something that has made it out of committee, and we have not seen it yet, and it's not been debated yet, so I don't know really the truth about it, and I've already been the recipient of lies that are spread about different bills. The IVF thing came out, we did what we had to do to try to get the IVF clinics back open. And then suddenly I've got all this social media, and some of y'all probably got it, saying that I was for giving immunity to people to kill children. I mean, give me a break. There's nothing more pro-life than trying to be for the IVF folks. And we're not done with that. That immunity thing was the best thing that we could do at the time to get the clinics back open. There was going to be a constitutional challenge to anything else that was brought, and that was going to delay it another year or so, they thought. And so the clinics would have been shut down. All these people that are in line right now that are currently getting those services, that are waiting for their next time to go back in. We were absolutely inundated in Montgomery with people in orange shirts. There were 250, 300 people that came around that were for the IVF stuff, and they came to all of our offices, and they came to the hearing, and they were, just begging, because some of them were saying, I've got an appointment next week. If the clinic's not open again next week, then I'm down money for storage. I'm down, I learned a lot about the IVF process, but they were going to be out money. They were going to be out an opportunity to get pregnant. And so there was a lot of pressure that came down to get them back up and going. The immunity was the best way to do it for now. We know that we've got a bigger challenge. And the bigger challenge is going to be tough, and I know Rebecca Fowler and I have discussed this at length, really. But the challenge is going to be, how do we define life, given the fact that we have this kind of a treatment, this kind of an opportunity for life to be created, outside of the womb. And, I turn to the Bible, and the Bible has 100 verses about how God knew us in the womb, knitted us in the womb. Of course, everything was talked about in the womb, and Rebecca was quick to say, well, we didn't have freezers in the time of the Bible. We didn't have freezers, we didn't have test tubes or whatever. So there's going to be a push to redefine some other way. Is it at conception? Is it at, conception when it's viable, when it's placed in the womb, when it's in a uterus? Because it goes even further than that, y'all. Regular birth control pills, the way that they thin the uterus and make the uterus unable to have the embryo attach, it could go so far as to outlaw birth control pills in Alabama. Because the normal process of the birth control pill, thinning the uterus so it can't attach, women are killing embryos every month by using birth control. And so it could go that far, and I don't think that's the intention of anybody, so it's just a lot that we haven't thought about, a lot that we've got to consider. There's just, it's a tough challenge. We didn't see that coming, and Brad, you and I didn't talk about IVF on the trail, so this one hit me blind.
Never guessed that one. Yeah.
No, I mean, the gaming, gambling, all that we talked about, and everything else, I already kind of had where I was and what I was going to do, and I've just kind of stayed true to that, and didn't have some of the pressures that other people did. But this IVF came out of the blue, and I'm on the health committee, and I had just gotten placed on the health committee, and then here comes IVF. And they were debating school choice on the floor, and somebody from the speaker's office came over and said, hey, the speaker needs to talk to you. And I'm like, ooh. And the guys around me said, oh, you're in trouble. And so I went down and met with the speaker up on the podium, and he said, hey, Bryan, the IVF thing is coming down, the bill's ready, we've got to put it in a committee tomorrow. And I've been thinking I was going to put it in Judiciary Committee because I need legal eyes on it. But then I remembered I've got legal eyes in the Health Committee. But I didn't want to do that to you without you being okay with it, because you're going to be put in the hot seat, and I just want to make sure you're okay with that. And I said, well, I'm fine with that, you do whatever. I said, you do realize that I'm primarily a divorce lawyer, but whatever. And he laughed and gave me a fist bump and said, I wouldn't do it to you if I didn't think you could have it. And so I went back to my seat, and the guys that were sitting around me said, what was that all about? And I said, well, the speaker just wanted to see if I was okay with him putting the IVF bill in Health Committee with me. Wanted to make sure it was okay with me. And they said, what kind of pictures do you have on the speaker? He doesn't ask if you can put it in a committee. He never asks if you can put it in a committee. What are you doing? And so, I don't know why he asked, but he did. But anyway, we got it in health. The people that were there in the orange shirts that were for the IVF clinics and that were showing us, they brought their babies with them. They were showing us their babies. They were satisfied with that bill, and they had asked for a public hearing, and then they withdrew their request for the public hearing. And so when we went down for the public hearing late that afternoon, we had the press, but we didn't have a room full of the orange shirts. They had all gone home. They were happy with what we had decided to do, and that was good enough for them. So we went forward with that. But we're not done with that one. That one's going to have to be dealt with. And, we've got the gambling lottery thing that has gone up to the Senate. They've whittled it way down from where it was. It's coming back down. I don't know whether the House is going to accept it the way it is, or whether they're going to want to go into conference and work on it some more, or whatever. All that's trying to do is give everybody the right to vote on it. It's not voting in gambling in Alabama. It's giving it to the people to vote on. That's all that's doing. Then we've also had school choice, and that's already gone through. That was something that was a big thing for Governor Ivey, and she was glad that we were able that came through and got passed. We're very fortunate here in our district to have really good schools that's not going to really affect. So I don't think it's going to be that big a deal to us. Anyway, so that's kind of where we are. It's been everybody down there is talking about what a very hard session it is. Last year they took nothing but a cupcake, puff little things to deal with in the session. This year they're handling very, very difficult issues, and I'm unfortunate enough to be there. This is my first session. When they're sitting there lamenting about it, I said, what are y'all talking about? It's the easiest session I've ever had. But it's been a very eye-opening experience down there. I've seen how on these bills that are very important to the governor, how they twist arms. I've seen how when it's very important to Alpha, they twist arms, and these the AEA twisting arms. And I was because I had just come off of the campaign trail, and I've been telling all y'all what I thought about it and how I was going to vote on it. They left me alone. I didn't have a lot of trouble from anybody. I was able to vote the way that I've been saying for the last 9 months I was going to vote. And but I do see how difficult that can be. They had people twisted down there, and there were certain groups saying, if you don't vote for this, we're gonna primary you next time. We're gonna get somebody to run against you. Then you got the governor that turned around and said to somebody, or not the governor, but the governor's office, they voted against something that was a big important thing for her on 2 different issues. And the big thing that was big for his district just got taken away. It was a guaranteed thing. He was going to have it. He was going to have the funding, and they were supposed to vote it in, get the money for it, and it just got taken away. So I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, it does exist, and I also realize that nobody by themselves can do anything down there in the legislature. You've got to be a part of. You got to have people with you, and if you go down there being, obstinate and not listening to what they're wanting to do and what they need also, they're not going to help you when it comes time. So I'm learning, guys. It's been an amazing process, and I've got a lot left to learn, but it's been an amazing time, and we're halfway through our session. The session is 30 days over a 105-day period. We're 15 days of session in. We've got another 15 days to go. So we've got to get it in before May the 20th, and I think they're saying now we're going to probably get it in by the first week of May. So anyway, I appreciate anything y'all have to say. I've heard from some of y'all. As some of these issues have come up, I've been very appreciative of some of the Facebook stuff that's come out, and some of y'all reaching out by text and everything. And anybody that wants my cell phone, you can have it. And I appreciate hearing from y'all. Anytime there's something that's important to Fayette, it's extremely important to us. I had a meeting today, this morning at 9 o'clock. Parker Harris, who's with the governor's office, texted me and said, hey, I'd like to come see you at lunch. Can you have lunch with me? And so I met him for lunch, and he was just wanting to talk, get to know me a little better, and talk about things that were important to the governor and things that were important to us. And we talked about Highway 43. Highway 43 project's very important to the governor. She is bucking against Ainsworth, who's wanting it to be going 6-lane on 65. And so we talked an awful lot today about Highway 43 and the importance that it would be to this district to get 43 all the way up to at least 22. And he's all for that, and says the governor's all for that. And so it's been, Greg Reed, being all of our district is in Greg Reed's district. He is extremely powerful down there, y'all. He is the head of the Senate, and that is a big, big deal. So anything that we need, it's important also to Greg Reed. So we have an immediate friend right there, and he is so good to us. He's a great guy. And Speaker Ledbetter has been extremely good and receptive to me, and I think I'm working well with leadership. Nothing happens down there unless you're working with leadership. So I've been very received down there, and I'm proud of that. So anyway, please reach out to me. Let me know what we need. Let me know what's going on, and I'll plan to be here. I haven't been here the last several weeks because we've been in session. We have a week off now. We're back next week. We have another week off for spring break. But when I'm not in session down there, I plan to be here. I want to hear what's going on in Fayette and know what's happening. So thank y'all very much, and glad to be with y'all here tonight. I'm glad to see this big turnout. This is a good. There's not an election next week. This is a good turnout. This is good. I'm glad to see everybody.
Thankfully, hopefully we can get you to the legislative update. Maybe in May.
Yeah.
If y'all are out by then.
We should be out by May, and I'll be glad to come and do the rundown of what we were able to do.
All right. If nothing else, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.